When you write, you can investigate, you can explore. And one of the things that I like investigating and exploring is my own family, because families are full of secrets and fibs and things you can never quite find out, and you think you will, and then you don't. And all sorts of odd and shocking things happen, don't they? So I'm going to start with something that was a complete and utter surprise to me and my brother, and it happened when we were going through the old photos. Do any of you go through old photos, old photo albums in your family? Have you got photo albums and you look at them and there's pictures of you as a baby, stark naked? No, not at all, no. Well, sometimes you do, and sometimes there are surprises in the photos. You ask a question and you say, "Who's that?" And the answer is the surprise. Me, my dad and my brother, we were going through the old photos, pictures of my dad with a broken leg, and my mum with big flappy shorts on, and me on a tricycle. When we got to one of my mum with a baby on her knee, and I go, "Is that me or Brian?" He's my brother. "Is that me or Brian?" And my dad says, "Let's have a look." "It isn't you or Brian," he says. "It's Alan. He died. He would have been 2 years younger than Brian and 2 years older than you. He was a lovely baby, whooping cough. I was away at the time. He coughed himself to death in Connie's arms." That was my mum. "The terrible thing is, it wouldn't happen today, but it was during the war, you see, and they didn't have the medicines. That must be the only photo of him we've got." Me and Brian looked at the photo. We couldn't say anything. It was the first time we had ever heard about Alan. For a moment, I felt ashamed, like as if I'd done something wrong. I looked at the baby, trying to work out who he looked like. I wanted to know what another brother would have been like. No way of saying. And Mum, she looked so happy. Of course, she didn't know when they took the photo that he would die, did she? Funny thing is, though my father mentioned it every now and then over the years, Mum never, and he never said anything in front of her about it, and we never let on that we knew. What I've never figured out was whether her silence was because she was more upset about it than my dad, or less. What do you think? More or less? I've no idea. Do you see? So you solve one problem or you come across one thing and then there's another mystery. And that's what I'm interested about writing, is that when you uncover one thing, there's something else under it that is another mystery. And the great thing about poems, if you write them, is you don't have to answer all the questions. You know, like in stories, they kind of finish up, don't they? Everyone ends up happily ever after, or if it's a Shakespeare play, they all end up dead. But with a poem like that, you don't have to answer all the questions. It can ask the questions and leave you to think about it. And that's why I like poems. And here's another one. You know, you can always go and see relatives, uncles, aunties, cousins, grannies, and so on, and they've got these mysteries. Listen to this one. "I went to see my father's cousin Michael. He was born in Poland. When the Nazis came in the West, his parents put him on a train going east, and he never saw them again. They died in a Nazi death camp. When the Russians came in the East, he was arrested, put on a train and sent to one of the Russian camps, but he lived. When I went to see him, he wouldn't tell me any of this. When he went out of the room, his wife said he can't bear to talk about any of it. When he came back into the room, he said, 'Tell him the story about my cousin Leosha.' So they told me the story about cousin Leosha. When the Nazis came in the West, Leosha pretended to be a Christian. She put a crucifix round her neck. Then she fetched her grandmother's brooch and took the diamonds off it. She took the soles off the heels of her shoes and put the diamonds inside the heels and put the soles back on. She thought if there were going to be any problems, she'd be able to sell them. Then she went west into Germany. In Germany, she worked in a factory, and no one ever found out that she was Jewish. At the end of the war, she couldn't face going back to Poland. Her parents, all her friends, and all her relations had been taken away to the camps and killed. She went to Israel to find her brother, Naphtali. She told him how she had lived right through the war with diamonds in the heels of her shoes. I always knew, she said, if ever I got into difficulty, I could have sold them and maybe paid someone to help me. And here they are, she said, the very diamonds themselves. And Naphtali said, where did you get the diamonds from, Laosha? And Laosha said, from our grandmother's brooch. So Naphtali said, listen carefully, Laosha. Many years ago, our grandmother wrote to me. She said that grandfather's business wasn't doing too well, and so to help out, she had taken the diamonds off her brooch and put in glass ones instead. And they sold off the diamonds. She didn't tell anyone about it, but she wrote to me to get it off her chest. You went through the whole war with nothing more than bits of glass in the heels of your shoes. And that was a story that my father's cousin's family told me.